Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this can be my review for In the Flesh, Season 2, Episode 2. Last week's episode, I think it was a little too generous to it. It wasn't so much that I didn't like last week's episode, it was just that I was too generous. It was just an okay episode. However, this episode, massive improvement. Literally, massive improvement. So good. I love this episode. I thought it was a perfect episode. I really enjoyed this one. And, yeah, I love this episode tonight. I thought it was great. I mean, I loved this episode last night. I thought it was great. There's a lot going on this episode. A lot more with Jem, I noticed in this episode. And the one thing I do like about this show is that they do have separate plots, but it all links together, so it's not like a bunch of separate plots. It's like one big plot. Let's just get to it. So, Jem is the main storyline of this episode, I must say. I thought that was interesting. They made Jem the main story. Basically, right away we get some really cool action scenes. Jem is unable to concentrate on her exam. She finally starts waking up on it, but the pen tip is bleeding, and all of her classmates and teachers turn into undead. So Jem pulls out her revolver, tries to shoot them, but there are no bullets in her chambers. The undead pull her down, and it turns out it's just a nightmare. She gets up and removes the towel from where she wet the bed. I was pretty sure it was a nightmare because I'm like, okay, why is everyone turning into a zombie? This is weird. Basically, she then discovers that Kieran is covered over the mirror with a towel. She puts the dry towel down on her mattress, lays back down, and Steve calls everyone down to breakfast. So Jem goes down to breakfast. She discovers that Kieran and Sue are wearing berets. Steve, wearing a striped shirt and beret, comes in and explains that it was his idea, and then puts a beret on Jem. He explains that they're having a special farewell meal for Kieran before he goes to Paris and serves French toast. So, we find out that Kieran is going to Paris. We didn't know where he was going, but he's going to Paris. So, I thought that was a good scene overall, because, they wear berets in Paris. So, I mean, that makes sense. So at the cemetery, the townspeople gather for Vicar Odie's funeral, and Keith and Gary fasten a cage down over the grave as a precaution against the second rising. So at her bungalow, Amy fills a syringe with a liquid from a jar. She then goes out into the living room where Simon is talking to Frankie Kirby, one of the girls from Jem's school. And this is how it all links together, because that's one of the people from Jem's school. So Simon assures her that being undead is nothing to be ashamed of. Amy then injects Simon with the liquid while Frankie apologizes for failing. Simon thanks her for trying, and she leaves. Amy asks if Frankie is as special as her, and Simon points out that Frankie rose in Rorton. And as he marks off Frankie on a map of the village, Amy says that she's going to stop Kieran from leaving, and Simon reminds her that Kieran is important. So Kieran then prepares to leave. Sue makes sure that he has everything he needs, including his artist portfolio. They all hug, and Kieran heads for the train station. Dean is walking by a house. He sees Freddie working on a house. Freddie insists that he isn't doing anything, but the resident comes out and pays him for doing her windows. Dean objects, and the woman points out that she can't afford both of them. Freddie explains that Haley is pressuring him about bills, and he has to make some money on solo jobs, and Dean walks away in disgust. Obviously, he's very disgusted about this. So, at the town council meeting, we see Maxine, she calls in for a vote on the new policy, and Duncan wonders if they have a choice. Maxine assures them that they do. However, she says that it's a national policy, and Philip and Pearl both agree it's necessary in response to recent events. So, after Duncan and Pearl leave, Philip thanks Maxine for promoting him to counselor after Odie's death. He has some suggestions for governing, but Maxine cuts him off and asks him to make sure everyone on the list at the cook-off seminar that morning. So, Kieran arrives at the train station. He's getting ready to leave for Paris. He finds Amy waiting for him. She warns Kieran that Maxine is in charge now and begs Kieran to stay. Because she's very worried that now that Maxine's in charge, it's not going to be good for, the undead. She's very worried about that. And basically, Kieran asks her to come with him, and Amy asks how many layers of mousse he put on. She asks how he'll have to travel to take off the layers, but Kieran ignores her question, and instead, he goes to get his ticket. When he sees Amy, the ticket officer realizes that Kieran is undead, and says that he can't sell him a ticket and tells him to wait. So that was a pretty big thing. Philip then comes to by a short time later and says that Kieran and Amy have to come with him. All PDS sufferers are required to come to the kickoff seminar, and tells Kieran that he won't get his train ticket for the moment because he has to come to this seminar. So, Jem then goes to class, and Henry invites her to sit with him. Henry is the guy, if you remember that, likes her. You know, this is the guy that has a crush on her, that wants to be with her. So, he starts to take out the bracelet that he made for her, but Mr. Overton calls the class to order. Overton talks about the scientists who created I don't know how you pronounce that, whatever. When the teacher claims it was the most important moment of the Rising, Henry tries to suck up to Jem by asking if the HVF was more important. He mentions that Jem was in the HVF and the other students don't believe it. Mr. Overton has Jem stand up and share her experience. She reluctantly gets up and asks what they want to know. So at the seminar, Kieran looks around and sees Simon, who nods to him. When the other undead asks what's going on, Phil plays a DVD from the Department of Partially Deceased Affairs, explaining that they've created the PDS Give Back scheme. All PDS sufferers are required to volunteer their time to their local communities. Once they complete their allotted task, they can apply for their citizenship in the UK, and basically they all have to get jobs now. That's what they have to do. They have to get jobs, and once they're done with their job, they can reapply in the UK, but until then, they have to all have jobs. So I think that's a pretty big thing that happens. So Kieran goes into Maxine's office and says that he can't do this scheme because he's leaving for Paris. Maxine tells him that he was given an outdated form and explains that to get a passport, PDS sufferers have to complete the Give Back scheme. So as Kieran starts to go, Maxine asks for his time of rising, and Kieran says that he doesn't know when it was. Meanwhile, Maxine puts a question mark on Kieran's file and sets it aside. Basically what she's saying is that, look, you have to do the work before you can get a passport. I can't give you a passport if you don't do the work. And you know what? I guess that does make sense. So, I mean, that was a pretty big thing there. So, for a lot of the episodes, he's now reporting to his job. Jem describes her exploits in the HVF, and one student asks how many undead she shot. Before Jem can answer, the bell rings, and as Henry goes, he sees Kieran, Hillary, and Charlotte go over to Jem. Kieran, their leader, says how cool Jem was and invites her to sit with them at lunch. Sue and Steve are having lunch at home, and Sue assures her husband that Kieran will be fine. They have nothing to worry about. The doorbell then is surprised to find Kieran there. He went back home because obviously, you know, he can't leave. He's realizing that he can't leave. Jem regales the three girls with stories of their exploits. They encourage her to use the term rodder as she talks. Henry comes over and asks Jem if she has a partner for the show until the next day. Karen asks what he was doing with the Rising, and Henry ignores her and says that he could use a partner. Charlotte interrupts and says that she's Jem's partner, and a surprise, Jem agrees. Once Henry walks off, Jem admits that she was friends with him before the Rising. Karen jokingly accuses Jem of boning him. Back at the table with Rob and Freddy, Rob says that things will be different when the second Rising comes. He then takes some of Blue Oblivion and suggests that they scare the villagers. So, Maxine goes back to her room at the Forest B&B and finds Sandra, however you pronounce it, Sandra looking at the photos of the undead. She puts on the wall. Sandra glances at the photos, some of which are crossed off, and then leaves. Once she's alone, Maxine circles Kieran's photo. I don't know what this is all about, but whatever reason, Maxine wants to do something to Kieran. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, she's definitely deeply investigating about Kieran. Philip is at home with his mother, Shirley, and this is kind of a funny scene. I thought this was kind of funny. She warns that people aren't happy with the scheme and is unhappy that Philip is siding with Maxine. Shirley suggests he go to college and meet new people, warning that she won't be around forever. She then shows Philip the page she set up for him on a dating site. I thought that was kind of funny. That she set up a page on a dating site. He's furious at her because his mother did it and didn't even ask him if he wanted to. So he storms out. He then goes to the club, unaware that someone in the flat opposite is taking a video of him. Inside, Philip goes past an undead stripper, meets with his undead girl, Shiri. She informs him that he wants the full girlfriend experience. While she goes into the next room to change, Philip takes out the romance movie on DVD and puts it in a player. Charlotte and Jem go back to the supermarket to buy some alcohol. Jem sees the spot where she found Kieran and Amy during the Rising, feasting on a human being. Jem hesitates, but Charlotte insists that she can come with her. Charlotte notices that Jem seems nervous, but Jem grabs some cider and heads out, saying that she's going to be fine. So Cheery comes back in, dressed like Amy, and thanks Philip for renting their special film. She snuggles with him and takes his hand. Here we get a really big scene with Amy after this. So, as Simon gives Amy her injection, she says that she's worried about Kieran, and Simon says that it's best for that it's for the best, and says that he'll talk to Kieran the next day. Amy asks what the undead prophet said would happen when they're covered to go to Rorton, where the Redeemed first rose. As he finishes the injection, Amy starts convulsing. Simon holds her until she regains control of herself. She just starts randomly shaking like she's having a seizure, basically. That's what was going on. I thought she was having a seizure, but she still has a headache, but insists that it's nothing. And as she leaves the room, she's still holding her head. She goes to her room. She realizes that her hand is just, like, uncontrollably shaking. You know, like, when you're so stressed, your hand's just, like, and you can't control it because it's shaking so much? That's happening to Amy, basically. Charlotte comes home with Jem, helps her pick out which HVF medal to take to show and tell. The girl asks if Jem ever hesitated on a mission, and Jem remembers when she didn't shoot a rabid Kieran. However, she lies to Charlotte and says that she never hesitated and that she's not a coward. Kieran comes in to offer Jem his moose because he knows she used it to cover up her spots. And embarrassed, Jem tells him to get out, and after a moment he leaves. Charlotte realizes that he's undead, and Jem asks her not to tell the others. Her new friend agrees and tells her that she's lucky to have her brother back. So the next day, Kieran makes himself up, puts on his work apron, and goes to his new job. He's realizing he has to do this. Charlotte's making breakfast for her mother, who is lying in bed staring off into space. Charlotte sees the tray down and looks at the photo of her and her parents, and then takes it with her. So, Simon reports to work late, and without his apron, Philip complains when Simon points out that Philip has a cattle prod. Philip insists that it's in case of a rabbit attack. Rorton's other undead they're putting up a fence, and Simon goes to help Kieran, because he wants to help Kieran. As they work, Simon points out that the Egyptians made the Israelites build their own slave quarters. He notices Kieran's suicide scars on his wrist, and when Kieran covers them over, Simon reveals his own scarred-over injection mark and assures him that they all have them. He tells Kieran that he suffered from depression because he thought life was meaningless. Kieran wonders if he still feels this way, and Simon says that he doesn't. Meanwhile, Gary arrives to relieve Philip because he has a doctor's appointment, and Philip says that they're all there except Amy. He doesn't know where she is. Amy has gone to see Dr. Russo, basically about her trembling hand. He points out that her last prescription for Neutropolish, however you pronounce it, was written a year ago. She finally tells him the commune made their own Neutropolish, and Russo warns her that it does have side effects, and one of those side effects is seizures. The doctor then writes her a prescription, and Amy leaves. So Philip is coming in with the urine sample and welcomes Amy back irritated. She tells him that his sample is leaking and walks out. The undead is taking a break. Simon hands out directions to a farmhouse barn for a party and said that they should all attend in the clothing they were buried in. Gary comes over and demands to know what they're doing. Simon says that he told them they could have the break. And after Gary gives in, he walks away. Kieran says that they only have to do it for 6 months. Simon says that Victus will keep adding on more time. Simon says that basically the certificates don't exist and no one will be re-citizenized, and the whole thing is a scam. Basically what he's saying is that we're never going to be able to be, re-citizenized because it's all a scam to just get us to work. So that's definitely pretty interesting, and I'm wondering where that's gonna go. So then we're back at school. Henry, Rob, and Frankie hide in the restroom and argue about who should take the blue oblivion first. They finally get Rob to take a quarter dose, and after a moment he turns rabid, and then they run out screaming. Here we get just a really intense scene, because Jem notices that Charlotte has a photo. Charlotte volunteers to do show and tell first, and starts to show everyone the photo. However, Henry and Frankie run by screaming. Overton sees Rob, locks the door, and Charlotte says that Jem can handle it. When Jem points out that she doesn't have a gun, Charlotte hands her the machete that Hillary brought in for show and tell. And after a moment, Jem steps forward, Overton removes a barricade, Rob sees her, walks down the hallway toward her, Jem wets herself, she finally drops the machete, pounds on the classroom door, crying. However, Kieran and the others refuse to let her in. Just some really intense shit is going down this season. Rob drops to his knees, then reverts back as the blue oblivion wears off. Disgusted, Charlotte tells Overton that that's his war hero. Gary meets with Maxine, complains that it will take weeks to get the new perimeter fence built. He suggests that Maxine commission a paid patrol, but she says that she's limited by the parish council. The MP offers her overtime by guarding the PDS participants in the woods. And everyone, even if they are not working out, when Gary asks if he can do it with proper firepower, Maxine leaves it to his judgment. The school calls about Rob, and Maxine says that she'll be there, and Gary goes with her. So Jem is now in the locker room, changing her pants when Charlotte comes in and shows Jem her family photo. She says that her father's name was Richard, and he came back during the Rising. Jem killed him in the supermarket, and Charlotte tells Jem that she's a coward, and now everyone knows it, and then she walks out. So that's a pretty big thing. She just killed Charlotte's father. So here we're getting to the end of the episode here. So Maxine confronts Henry, Frankie, and Rob. Says that if they cooperate, then they won't be punished. She wants to know where Rob got the Blue Oblivion, and he finally tells her the website where he obtained them was from the Dead Prophet. Overton complains that he had no one to call for help since the HVF has been disbanded, and Maxine leaves with Gary. Who's calling? I don't know who that is. Whatever. Amy meets Simon at the barn, and where he's setting up for the party. He assures her that Kieran will be there, and at home, Kieran finds a website warning that the GBS recitizenship is a scam, because he wasn't really sure if that's true, but then he realizes that it is just a scam, and he's really upset. Steve comes home, invites him to join him for a movie and popcorn. Kieran says that he's going out, and he walks away. He's really upset at this point. Jem sits on a bench, drinking and looking at her HVF medals. Gary drives by, and then stops when he sees her and tells her to get in. Kieran looks at himself in the mirror, rips off the work apron, throws it on the floor. He then gets his burial clothing out of the closet and puts them on for the party. He's basically doing this because he's just pissed. He really is. Because he's realizing, I'm never going to be able to get out of here. Gary parks out in the forest. Jem tells him what happened. He said that they're all frozen at one time or another, even him, and reminds Jem that she saved him plenty of times. Gary tells Jem that she is the best fighter he ever fought with. Jem gives him a kiss on the cheek in thanks, and they talk about the new patrol duties. Gary shows Jem the revolver he brought with him. He tells her to take it, saying it belongs in the right hands, and they moved out. So, yeah, so maybe there's a relationship going on with Gary and Jem, I don't know. Kieran goes to the barn, finds humans and undead dancing together. Very funny scene here. We see a partially drunk Henry comes over and says that he's going to be Kieran's brother-in-law, shows him the bracelet he made. Frankie drags him away, and here's the hilarious part with Amy. Amy is completely drunk. She comes over to hug Kieran. She's clearly drunk and explains that they've been sampling sheep's brains. Amy offers Kieran some, and he refuses. Then asks about Simon. She tells Kieran that Simon is out by the campfire and takes Kieran out to him. And she's like, Simon is going to be my future husband. And it's just hilarious to watch because she's so drunk and everything. Simon is questioning one of the undead, asking if there was anything else there when he arose. Before the man can answer, Amy arrives with Kieran, and the man says that Kieran was there when he rose. Kieran asks to talk to Simon alone, and they step away from the fire while Amy goes to get more wood. So, Jem goes with Gary into the woods, assures him that she's up to it. She runs on ahead. Gary goes after her. Henry staggers out of the barn and into the woods. Simon tells Kieran that when he was a kid, he thought he could escape to the U.S. and be happier. When he did, he was miserable again after a week. Simon knows from Amy what happened with Rick and Bill Macy and points out that Kieran still has family and Amy has reason to say Morton. He takes Kieran's hand and says that he's there as well. So they're trying to figure out reasons why they should stay. And then the very end here, this is big. Jem ducks through the perimeter fence where it's down, and she keeps going. Gary spots the hole, follows after her. Up ahead, Jem sees someone staggering toward her, aims the revolver. The figure gets closer. Jem fires. Gary runs over, and Jem realizes that she's killed Henry. So yes, Jem just killed the guy that really liked her. So he's now dead, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. So now that Jem killed Henry, I don't really know what else is going to happen here. She's killed Henry, so that's going to be a pretty big thing. One other question is there a way for all of them to somehow get that recitizenship? I think there is a way for them to do it. They just have to find a way. Also, Amy and this new prescription. I don't know how this is going to work. What's going to happen with her in this new prescription? Is there going to be more side effects to that? I was really into the whole side effects thing in this episode. But again, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought this was a really good episode. Let me know what you guys saw of this episode. That's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. My next review will be for Game of Thrones. So, see you then. Bye.